The night didn't settle in gently. It hit him all at once. It broke apart in the reflection of a half-empty glass, in the sharp scrape of a chair across the smooth floor, in that heavy silence that only comes after embarrassment. Daniel sat there, completely still, in the aftermath of a date that had gone so wrong it almost didn't feel real, like some twisted joke life played just to remind him of his place. Across from him, the chair was empty now. Only minutes earlier, someone had been sitting there, smiling politely, asking surface-level questions, checking her phone a little too often. And then, without much pause, she said something that didn't just hurt, it sank deep and stayed. She glanced at him, then at the photo of his son on his phone, and said she wasn't interested in taking on someone else's responsibility. Then she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked off like he was just a bad choice she made for the evening. Just like that, Daniel was alone again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of human connection, take a second right now to like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this prove that even the hardest nights can turn into something unforgettable. Daniel didn't move for a while. The restaurant carried on around him, plates clinking, soft music playing, voices rising and fading. But it all felt far away, like he was watching it through a window. He looked down at the table, at the untouched food, at the faint reflection of someone he barely recognized anymore, a single dad. That label had stuck to him over the years, growing into more than just a description. It had become the way people saw him. Some admired it, sure, but most saw problems, limits, baggage. He had tried to ignore that when he agreed to this date. He told himself maybe this time will be different. Maybe someone would see him, not just a situation. But reality had a way of shutting down hope. His hand moved to his phone. The screen lit up with a picture of his son, Adam, 7 years old. Messy hair, a big smile, one missing front tooth. The kind of smile that could erase a long, exhausting day. The kind of reason that kept Daniel pushing forward, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. He leaned back in his chair and let out a quiet breath, the weight of exhaustion settling in slowly. It wasn't just about tonight. He was tired of trying, tired of explaining, tired of watching people leave the moment things got real. He didn't notice her at first. The waitress had been watching him for a while, not in a nosy way, but in that quiet, observant way that comes from seeing people at their best and worst night after night. She noticed how his shoulders dropped when the woman left, how he hadn't touched his food, how he stared at his phone like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. She walked over slowly, careful not to startle him. Daniel only looked up when he heard her soft voice asking if he needed anything else. For a second, he didn't know what to say. His first instinct was to brush it off, to nod, smile, pretend everything was fine. But something about her voice, gentle, real, unforced, made it harder to fake it. He gave a small shake of his head and forced a weak smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She didn't walk away. Instead, she stayed there for a moment longer than most would, like she was thinking something through. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out the empty chair across from him, the same one that had just been left, and sat down. It wasn't bold. It wasn't awkward. It was simply human. And in that instant, something shifted. Daniel blinked, surprised, unsure whether to feel uneasy or thankful. No one had ever done anything like that before. Not here, not like this. The waitress quietly introduced herself, her name carrying the same warmth as her presence. There was no pity in her eyes, no discomfort, just a calm understanding, like she didn't need the whole story to get the picture. At first, Daniel tried to keep things light. He joked about bad dates, brushed it off, downplayed everything. But she didn't laugh in that quick, dismissive way people do when they want to move on. She listened, really listened. And before he even realized it, Daniel started opening up. Not all at once, not in some dramatic spill, but slowly, piece by piece. He talked about his son, the early mornings, the late nights, the constant balancing act between work and being a dad, the loneliness that crept in during the quiet hours after Adam fell asleep, when it felt like the world had forgotten about him. He mentioned the dates that never led anywhere, the conversations that shifted the moment he said he had a child, The way people's smiles changed after that. Less interest, less effort, less willingness to stay. The waitress didn't interrupt. She didn't throw out empty comfort. She just stayed, present in a way that felt rare, almost unfamiliar. And then, after a pause that felt heavier than everything he had said, she made an offer. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough to change everything. She asked if she could pay for his meal. Daniel quickly shook his head. Pride, instinct, habit, it all kicked in at once. He wasn't looking for a handout. He didn't want to be seen as that guy, the one people felt sorry for. But she didn't push the way most people would. Instead, she said something that made him pause. She told him it wasn't about pity. It was about balance. About how sometimes life takes more from you than it gives. And in those moments, someone steps in, not to fix everything, but to remind you that you're still seen. Then she added something else. She said she understood more than he probably realized. That's when Daniel started noticing the small details, the faint tiredness in her eyes, the way she carried herself. Not just like someone doing a job, but like someone who had her own story to carry. He gently asked what she meant, and for the first time that night, the focus shifted away from him. She told him about her life. Not everything, but enough to paint a clear picture. A life filled with struggle, responsibility, and quiet sacrifices that no one ever applauded. She talked about caring for someone who relied on her, about working long hours, about a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from feeling invisible. In that shared moment of honesty, something unexpected happened. Two strangers, brought together by chance, started to understand each other in a way most people never do. Time passed without either of them noticing. The restaurant slowly emptied. The noise faded. The outside world felt far away. For the first time in a long while, Daniel didn't feel like he had to defend his life. He didn't feel the need to explain why his son came first, why his time was limited, why everything revolved around someone else. He just felt accepted, and that simple feeling hit him harder than anything else that night. As the evening came to an end, the waitress stood up, her shift clearly over. She didn't make a big deal out of what had happened. She didn't act like she had done anything special. But before leaving, she did one last thing. She handed him a small piece of paper. On it was a phone number, and beneath it, a short message that stayed with him long after he left the restaurant. It wasn't an invitation filled with pressure. It wasn't a promise of anything specific. It was simply a chance to talk again, to meet again, to continue something neither of them could fully explain yet, but both of them felt. Daniel sat there for a moment after she walked away, holding that piece of paper like it was fragile, like it mattered, because it did. It wasn't just a number. It was proof that the night hadn't ended the way it started. Proof that even after rejection, after disappointment, after feeling like you don't belong, something unexpected can still find its way to you. Something real. When he finally stood up, grabbing his coat and glancing one last time around the nearly empty restaurant, he realized something had shifted, not in a loud, life-changing way, but in a quiet, steady one. The kind of change that doesn't announce itself, but stays with you. The kind that makes you think, maybe the story isn't over yet. Before we get to the ending, let me ask you something. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever had a moment where a complete stranger changed your day, or even your life? Because what happened next day with Daniel forever? Days turned into weeks, and that small piece of paper became more than just a memory. It became a bridge between two lives that had been moving side by side without ever meeting. They saw each other again, not at the restaurant this time, but in quieter places. Parks, small cafes, simple walks where conversations felt easy and natural. Slowly, carefully, something began to grow. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't built on big gestures or dramatic moments. It was built on understanding, on shared silence, on a connection that didn't demand anything, but simply offered something real. And one day, Daniel introduced her to Adam. That moment could have gone 100 different ways. Fear lingered in the background, filling his mind with doubt, preparing him for the worst. But instead, it was simple, natural, real. Adam smiled. She smiled back. And just like that, something fragile turned into something stronger. Not a replacement, Not a solution, but an addition, a new chapter. Years later, Daniel would still think about that night. The terrible date, the empty chair, the quiet offer that changed everything. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. Because it showed that sometimes, when everything feels like it's falling apart, something unexpected is already on its way to find you. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and second chances, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You never know who might need to hear a story like this today. Because in a world that often feels fast and disconnected, moments like these still exist. And sometimes, all it takes is one person, one small act, to change everything.